They wanted her to be discarded, abandoned. They thought she would come crawling back to beg for their affection like she had in her past life. No, this time she would make a different choice. This time she would find herself a family worthy of her, a protector with real power, someone who would value her not out of obligation but out of genuine gratitude and love. Young miss, the door burst open. Jiang Qingyu stood in the doorway, his 12-year-old face twisted with irritation. Behind him, Qingyu could see several servants hovering nervously. What's this nonsense about being ill? Mother specifically said we must all attend the festival together. Don't be difficult. Qingyu stared at her brother's face, a face she'd once trusted, once loved. In her past life, she'd seen coldness in his eyes that night and convinced herself she'd imagined it, that he'd been distracted, that he'd tried to come back for her but couldn't find her. Now, looking at him with 2 lifetimes of knowledge, she saw the truth. He knew exactly what he was doing. Even now, even as a child himself, Yunxiao was making his choice, and he was not choosing her. I said I'm not going, Qingyu replied calmly. Yunxiao's jaw tightened. The family is waiting. Then don't let me keep you. She turned away from him, moving to the window. Please give mother and father my regards. She heard him take a sharp breath, heard the rustle of his robes as he stepped into the room. Jiang Qingyu, you will come to the festival. Stop this childish rebellion. The word hung in the air between them. Qingyu could feel his anger like heat against her back. In her past life, she would never have defied him. She'd been so desperate for any scrap of familial affection, so eager to be seen as a good daughter, a dutiful sister. What a fool she'd been. Fine, Yunxiao said coldly. Stay here and sulk. But when mother asks why you couldn't be bothered to attend, don't expect me to make excuses for you. He left, slamming the door behind him. Click on the like button. Subscribe and comment if you're enjoying the story. Qingyu waited until his footsteps faded completely. Then she moved quickly, changing out of her fine festival robes into simpler clothing, the kind a servant's child might wear. She pulled her hair into a plain braid and wrapped a common cloak around her shoulders. The Jiang compound was in chaos as the family prepared to depart for the festival. No one noticed one small figure slipping out through the servants' entrance and disappearing into the gathering dusk. The festival was exactly as she remembered, overwhelming, chaotic, beautiful, and dangerous. Qingyu moved through the crowds with purpose now, her small body weaving between adults who didn't see her. She wasn't heading toward the main festival grounds where her family would be making their grand appearance. Instead, she made her way toward the eastern merchant district, where the streets grew narrower and the crowds more rough. This was where it would happen. This was where the assassins would strike. She found a spot in the shadows of a closed shop, tucked behind a stack of crates that gave her a clear view of the street. Then she waited. The sun sank lower. The lanterns glowed brighter. The music grew louder and more discordant, just like before. Qingyu's heart hammered in her chest. What if her memories were wrong? What if the attack happened somewhere else at a different time? What if the timeline had already changed because she'd refused to attend the festival with her family? No. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Some things were too big to change. Royal assassinations didn't hinge on whether one unwanted daughter went to a festival or stayed home. A commotion down the street caught her attention there. An elaborate carriage drawn by white horses, surrounded by guards in imperial livery. The Grand Princess's carriage, distinctive with its purple silk curtains and gold trim. Qingyu tensed, every muscle in her small body coiling tight. The attack came fast. Shadows peeled away from the darkness between buildings. Blades flashed in the lantern light. The guards shouted in alarm, but the assassins were skilled and ruthless. They'd planned this perfectly, striking at the exact moment when the carriage was farthest from the main festival grounds, where the narrow streets would prevent reinforcements from arriving quickly. Chaos erupted. The horses screamed and reared. The carriage tipped dangerously to one side, and from the tilted doorway a small figure tumbled out and hit the street hard. A child. Maybe 5 years old, dressed in fine silk robes, her hair adorned with gold pins. She lay stunned for a moment, then began to cry, high, terrified screams that were drowned out by the sounds of combat. The assassins didn't see her. The guards were too busy fighting for their lives. And in the chaos, the child began crawling away from the violence, her small body moving instinctively toward the dark alley where Qingyu had hidden 20 years ago, where she had died, alone and forgotten, while Qingyu did nothing. Not this time. Qingyu burst from her hiding place. Her child's body was small and weak, but fear made her fast. She ran toward the injured girl, her feet pounding against the cobblestones. Come on, she gasped, grabbing the child's arm. We have to hide. The little girl stared at her with wide, terrified eyes, but she didn't resist as Qingyu pulled her into the shadows of the alley. They pressed themselves against the wall, behind a stack of rotting crates that stank of fish and decay. Behind them, the sounds of combat began to fade. Qingyu heard shouting, then the thunder of hooves as reinforcements finally arrived. But by then the assassins had melted away into the night, leaving only bodies and blood behind. Qingyu held the little girl tight, one hand pressed over her mouth to muffle her crying. "SHH," she whispered. "Don't make a sound, not yet." She didn't know if there were still assassins nearby, waiting to finish the job. She didn't know if the guards could be trusted. In her past life, she'd learned that palace politics made everyone a potential enemy. They waited in the darkness until the sounds of the festival returned to normal, until the guards had finished their search and moved on, until the street was empty except for the glow of lanterns and the distant music. Only then did Qingyu finally look at the child in her arms. The little girl had stopped crying, but her face was pale with shock and pain. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead and her left arm hung at an odd angle, broken or dislocated. "What's your name?" Qingyu asked softly. "El Lingxiao," the girl whispered. "I want my mother." Lingxiao, the Grand Princess's only child, believed to have been kidnapped and murdered by assassins. Qingyu's mind raced. If she took this child back to the guards now, would they believe her story? Or would they assume she was part of the assassination plot? A 7-year-old girl appearing conveniently from the shadows to rescue a princess. It would look suspicious at best, like a clumsy cover story at worst. And even if they believed her, what then? She'd receive a reward perhaps, some money, official thanks, but it wouldn't change her fate. She'd still be sent back to the Jiang family, where Yunxiao and Wanru waited to grind her into dust. No, this opportunity was too precious to waste on a simple rescue. "Take you to your mother," Qingyu said carefully. "But first we need to make sure you're not hurt too badly. Can you stand?" Lingxiao tried, but her injured arm made her cry out in pain. Qingyu examined it carefully, drawing on memories from her past life when she'd learned medicine out of desperation. The Jiang family had certainly never paid for a physician to treat her injuries. "It's dislocated," she said quietly. "I can fix it, but it will hurt. A lot." "Can you be brave?" Lingxiao nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Good girl, bite down on this." Qingyu handed her a strip of fabric torn from her own cloak. "On 3, 1, 2. She didn't wait for 3. With a sharp, practiced motion, she snapped the shoulder back into place. Lingxiao's scream was muffled by the fabric, her small body jerking with pain. But then it was done, and the arm hung properly again, though it would be sore for days. "There," Qingyu said gently, fashioning a rough sling from more of her cloak. "Now we need to clean that cut on your head. Come on." She led the princess's daughter deeper into the alley, to where she remembered a public well stood in a small courtyard. The water was cold and none too clean, but it was better than nothing. As she carefully washed the blood from Lingxiao's face, Qingyu's mind worked through possibilities and consequences. The Grand Princess would be frantic. The entire Imperial Guard would be searching the city. Every gate would be locked down. By now, they might have even assumed the worst, that the princess's daughter was dead or beyond recovery, which meant that whoever returned Lingxiao alive would earn more than just gratitude, they would earn a debt. "Lingxiao," Qingyu said slowly, "do you trust me?" The little girl nodded, her eyes still wide with fear and pain, but also with a child's instinctive trust for someone who had helped her. "Good. Then listen carefully. I'm going to take you home, but I need you to do something for me. When you see your mother, when you tell her what happened, I need you to tell her the truth. That I saved you, that I helped you, that I didn't run away or ask for a reward. Can you do that?" "Yes," Lingxiao whispered. "I'll tell her, I promise." Qingyu smiled, a real smile, the first one she'd worn since her rebirth. "Then let's go find your mother." Grand Princess's estate was ablaze with light. Every window glowed, every courtyard was filled with guards and servants rushing back and forth. Qingyu could hear shouting from inside, could feel the barely controlled panic that radiated from the compound. She approached the main gate with Lingxiao at her side, her hand firmly holding the little girl's good arm. The guards saw them coming and immediately drew their weapons. "Stop," one of them barked. "Identify yourselves." "My name is Jiang Qingyu," she called out, her child's voice carrying clearly in the night air. "I'm returning someone you've been looking for." She gently pushed Ling Xiao forward into the light of the gate lanterns. For a moment, no one moved. Then everything exploded into motion. Young princess, she's alive. Alert the Grand Princess immediately. Hands reached for Ling Xiao, but the little girl clung to Qingyu's sleeve. Don't go, she said urgently. You have to stay, I promised. Stay, Qingyu assured her. I won't leave. They were ushered inside with a speed that left Qingyu's head spinning. Servants pressed warm blankets around them. Physicians appeared from nowhere to examine Ling Xiao's injuries. Guards surrounded them in a protective circle that felt more like a prison than protection. And then she came. Grand Princess Linglong swept into the courtyard like a storm given human form. She was tall and elegant, her robes the deep purple of imperial royalty, her hair adorned with phoenix pins that marked her status. But her face was ravaged with fear and grief that transformed the moment she saw her daughter. Ling Xiao. The princess dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter into her arms with a desperation that made Qingyu's chest ache. This was what maternal love looked like, this raw, uncontrolled emotion that she'd never seen on her own mother's face. Mother, Ling Xiao was crying again, but these were tears of relief. Mother, I was so scared. You're safe now. You're safe. Linglong held her daughter close, rocking her gently, her own tears falling freely. My brave girl, my precious child, I thought I'd lost you. They stayed like that for a long moment while everyone in the courtyard watched in silence. Even the hardened guards seemed moved by the reunion. Finally, Linglong pulled back just enough to examine her daughter properly. Her eyes went immediately to the bandaged forehead, the makeshift sling, the tear-stained but otherwise healthy face. Who treated your wounds? She asked quietly. Ling Xiao turned and pointed at Qingyu. She did. She saved me, mother. When I fell from the carriage, when I was alone and scared, she came and helped me. She hid me from the bad men. She fixed my arm even though it hurt. She brought me home. Linglong's gaze moved to Qingyu for the first time. Qingyu stood straight under that scrutiny, meeting the princess's eyes without flinching. She knew how she must look, a small child in common clothes, dirt-stained and exhausted, completely out of place in this grand estate. But she didn't bow. She didn't grovel. She'd spent one lifetime on her knees begging for scraps of affection from people who didn't value her, never again. Your name is Jiang Qingyu, Linglong asked. Your Highness. From the Jiang family. By birth, Qingyu said carefully. Though I have no particular attachment to them. Something flickered in Linglong's eyes, interest, perhaps, or curiosity. You're very young. How did you know how to treat dislocated shoulders? I learned from necessity, Qingyu replied simply. It was a child's voice saying adult words, but Linglong didn't seem to find it strange. Instead, she studied Qingyu with an intensity that felt like being weighed and measured. You could have simply pointed my daughter toward the guards, the princess said slowly. You could have left her once you knew she was safe. Instead, you treated her injuries yourself and brought her directly to me. Why? Qingyu had prepared for this question. She knew the answer she should give, something humble and noble about duty and compassion. But she was tired of lying, tired of pretending to be less than she was. Because I knew that a debt owed by the Grand Princess is worth more than gold, she said honestly. Because I need an ally, and you need someone who proved their loyalty when it mattered most. Courtyard went silent. Several guards shifted uncomfortably. A servant gasped, but Linglong threw back her head and laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound that transformed her face from severe to beautiful. My goodness, she said, still chuckling. Such honesty from a 7-year-old, your family must not know what to do with you. They don't, Qingyu agreed. Which is why I'd rather find a new family if one will have me. The laughter died. Linglong's expression became serious, almost calculating. You wish to leave the Jiang household. I wish to survive, Qingyu said quietly. And I cannot do that as Jiang Qingyu, unwanted daughter, but perhaps I could survive as someone else. Someone valued. A long moment, Linglong said nothing. Then she stood, still holding Ling Xiao against her hip, and walked closer to Qingyu. She studied her face with an intensity that would have made most children cry. Qingyu met her gaze steadily. Either very clever or very desperate, Linglong finally said. Which is it? Both, Your Highness. Another silence. Then Linglong glanced at her daughter. Ling Xiao, what do you think? Should we keep the girl who saved you? Ling Xiao's face lit up. Yes, please, mother, she was so brave, and she didn't cry even once, even when everything was scary. I see. Linglong looked back at Qingyu. If I take you into my household, you understand what that means. You would be cutting ties with the Jiang family. You would become a member of the imperial family in all but name. Your life would no longer be your own. You would owe loyalty to me, to the throne, to the empire. Better that than owing loyalty to people who would discard me at the first opportunity, Qingyu replied. You speak as if you know from experience. I do, Qingyu thought. 20 years of experience dying slowly while my family watched and did nothing. But she couldn't say that. So instead, she said simply, I know enough. Linglong stared at her for one more long moment. Then she nodded, decision made. Well, Jiang Qingyu, from this day forward, you are under the protection of the Grand Princess. You will live in my estate, be educated alongside my daughter, and be treated as a member of this household. In return, you will serve me with loyalty and honesty. Do you accept these terms? Qingyu's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone must hear it. This was it. This was the moment where everything changed. I accept, she said clearly. Good. Linglong gestured to a nearby servant. Prepare a chamber for our new ward. See that she's fed, bathed, and given proper clothing. Tomorrow we'll discuss the formal arrangements. The servant bowed and hurried to obey. But before Qingyu could follow, Linglong caught her arm. One more thing, the princess said quietly, her voice low enough that only Qingyu could hear. I don't know why a 7-year-old speaks and thinks like someone much older. I don't know what the Jiang family did to you that made you so desperate to leave, but I will find out. And if I discover you're playing some deeper game, if you're using my daughter's rescue as a cover for something more sinister. She didn't finish the threat. She didn't need to. I am exactly what I appear to be, Your Highness, Qingyu said softly. A child who was given a second chance and chose not to waste it. Linglong's eyes narrowed. A second chance? A chance to make a different choice, Qingyu amended quickly. To be smarter this time. For a moment, she thought the princess would push further. But then Ling Xiao yawned hugely, and Linglong's expression softened into pure maternal concern. Enough interrogation for tonight, she said, releasing Qingyu's arm. Go get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. Qingyu bowed properly this time, not the groveling bow of a servant, but the respectful bow of one equal acknowledging another. Then she followed the servant into the depths of the estate, away from the life she'd lived before, toward a future she would forge with her own hands. Behind her, she heard Ling Xiao's sleepy voice. Mother, I like her. She's different from other children, Linglong murmured. She certainly is. Jiang family compound was in chaos. Lady Jiang paced back and forth in the main hall, her elegant robes swishing with each agitated step. Lord Jiang sat rigidly in his chair, his face carved from stone, and between them, looking remarkably unconcerned, stood Jiang Yunxiao and Jiang Wanru. How could you lose her? Lady Jiang demanded for the 10th time. Your own sister, Yunxiao. You were supposed to watch her. She said she wanted to look at the lantern stall. Yunxiao replied with practiced ease. I turned around for just a moment and she was gone. The festival was so crowded. We searched everywhere, Mother, Wanru added, her voice trembling with false distress. For hours. We were so worried. Where could she have gone? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Qingyu watched this scene unfold from the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. The memory of it burned in her mind. In her past life, she'd been found 3 days later by city guards, half-starved and traumatized. The Jiang family had taken her back with great ceremony, making a show of their relief and concern. It had all been an act. Within a week, they'd been punishing her for running away and causing trouble. But she wasn't watching from the doorway in her past. She was remembering while standing in the Grand Princess's estate, being fitted for new robes by servants who actually smiled at her. Hold still, young miss, the seamstress said gently. We're almost done. Sorry, Qingyu murmured, forcing herself back to the present where everything was different, where she wore silk robes in the princess's colors, where servants addressed her with respect, where she was safe. A knock at the door interrupted the fitting. One of Linglong's personal attendants entered and bowed. Young Miss Qingyu, the Grand Princess requests your presence in her study. Qingyu's stomach clenched. It had been 2 days since the festival. 2 days of being treated like a guest, fed well, given a beautiful chamber. But she knew this couldn't last without some kind of formal arrangement. The question was, what would Linglong demand in return? She followed the attendant through corridors that were becoming familiar, until they reached Linglong's private study. An elegant room filled with books and scrolls, with windows that overlooked a tranquil garden. The princess sat at her desk, reading through a document. She looked up as Qingyu entered and gestured to a cushion across from her. Sit. Qingyu obeyed, folding her hands in her lap. She kept her expression calm, but her heart raced. Linglong set down the document and leaned back, studying Qingyu with that same intense gaze. "I've had my people make inquiries about you," she said without preamble. "About your family, the results were interesting. Jiang family reported you missing after the festival. They mounted a search. Very public, very dramatic. Lord Jiang himself went to the city magistrate to file a report." Linglong's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "They seemed genuinely distraught." Qingyu said nothing. "But when my people made discreet inquiries with the household servants, they learned something different. Apparently, you're known in the Jiang compound as the spare daughter, the one who was switched at birth with the beloved Wanru, the biological child no one quite knows what to do with." "I see. The servants say you're housed in a back chamber, given the minimum of care and attention, that your mother rarely speaks to you, that your brother treats you like a burden, that the only one who shows you any affection at all is the father, and even he keeps his distance to avoid upsetting his wife and the favored daughter." Qingyu's hands tightened in her lap, but her voice remained steady. "Your people are thorough. They also say," Linglong continued, "that you were supposed to attend the festival with your family, but at the last moment you refused. Your brother was quite angry about it." "Was? Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Qingyu could lie. She could make up some excuse about feeling ill or being afraid of crowds, but Linglong had offered her honesty from the beginning. Perhaps it was time to return that gift. "Because I knew he was going to abandon me," Qingyu said quietly. "I don't know how I knew. Call it instinct. But when I looked at my brother that day, I saw something in his eyes that made me certain that if I went to the festival with him, I would regret it. So you refused." "So I refused." Qingyu met Linglong's gaze. "And then I went to the festival alone, and I found your daughter, and I made a choice that would change my life forever." "Calculated choice." Linglong leaned forward. "You're 7 years old. Most children your age are playing with dolls and crying over scraped knees. But you speak like an adult. You think like a strategist. You treated my daughter's injuries with the skill of someone trained in medicine. And you looked at me that night and openly admitted you were using my gratitude to escape your family." She paused. "So I'll ask you one more time, Jiang Qingyu, who are you really?" The moment stretched. Qingyu felt the weight of the question, the danger of it. If she told the truth, the full truth about her rebirth, about the future she'd lived and the death she'd died, Linglong would think her mad. Or worse, possessed by spirits. But she could tell part of the truth. The part that mattered. "I'm someone who learned hard lessons very young," Qingyu said slowly. "I'm someone who was hurt enough times to recognize danger when I see it. I'm someone who decided that surviving is more important than being loved by people who don't value me." Linglong's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, recognition perhaps, understanding. "Sound like me," the princess said softly. "When I was young, the palace was full of people who smiled to my face and plotted behind my back. My own brothers fought over the throne, and I learned quickly that trust was a luxury I couldn't afford." She tilted her head. "Is that what your family taught you? That you can't trust them?" "They didn't have to teach me," Qingyu replied. "I learned by watching." "Watching what?" "Watching how they looked at Wanru compared to how they looked at me. Watching how my brother's eyes would slide past me as if I wasn't there. Watching my mother laugh with the daughter she chose and fall silent when I entered the room." Qingyu's voice remained steady, but her words cut like blades. "You don't need to be hurt directly to understand you're not wanted." Linglong was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window, her hands clasped behind her back. "Jiang family has been asking about you," she said. "Not publicly, not yet, but they've sent discreet messages to my household, inquiring whether we've seen a lost child matching your description. They're being careful, testing the waters before making any official claims." Qingyu's stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. Yet." Linglong turned back to face her. "Before I respond, I need to understand what you want. If I acknowledge that you're here, the Jiang family will demand your return. They're your blood relatives. By law, they have a claim to you." "Unless I'm formally adopted by someone of higher rank," Qingyu said. "Yes." Linglong's lips curved into a real smile this time. "Unless that, you've thought this through." Had time to think. "The question becomes, do you want to be my adopted daughter, Jiang Qingyu? Not my ward, not my guest. My daughter in law and in name, equal to Ling Xiao in status. Protected by imperial decree." Qingyu's breath caught. She'd hoped for protection, for a place in the household. But adoption? That was beyond her most optimistic expectations. It was also dangerous. Adoption into the imperial family would make her a permanent enemy of the Jiang family. They would see it as the ultimate insult, the ultimate betrayal. And in her past life, she'd learned that the Jiangs never forgot an insult. But then they were already her enemies. They just didn't know it yet. Yes, Qingyu said firmly. I want that. More than anything. Even knowing it will destroy any chance of reconciliation with your birth family. There was never any chance of that. Linglong studied her for another long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. I'll begin the formal proceedings. It will take time. Imperial adoptions require documentation, official seals. Emperor's approval. But my brother trusts my judgment. He'll grant the petition. She walked back to her desk and picked up a brush, dipping it in ink. In the meantime, you'll begin your education in earnest. If you're to be my daughter, you'll need to learn court etiquette, politics, poetry, music, and a dozen other skills. You'll also continue your medical training. That's a useful talent, and I see no reason to waste it. Your Highness. Qingyu. Linglong looked up from the document she was writing. When the adoption is finalized, you'll no longer be Jiang Qingyu. You'll be Yun Qingyu of the Imperial Yun family. That name will carry weight and responsibility. Don't waste it. Won't, Qingyu promised. Good, now go find Ling Xiao. She's been asking about you constantly. I think she's decided you're her new best friend. Qingyu bowed and left the study, her heart soaring. As she walked through the corridors, she passed a mirror and caught sight of her reflection. A small girl in fine robes, hair properly styled, eyes bright with something that might have been hope. She looked different already. Felt different. Comment if you're enjoying the story. Don't forget to subscribe and like. In her past life, she'd spent decades trying to earn a place in a family that didn't want her. Now, in a matter of days, she'd found a place where she was valued for exactly who she was. The Jiang family didn't know it yet, but they'd made a critical mistake. They'd thrown away a daughter who could have been useful to them. And now that daughter was about to become something they couldn't control, something they should fear. 3 weeks later, the official announcement was made. Grand Princess Linglong had adopted a new daughter, elevating the child to imperial status. The girl's name was Yun Qingyu, and she was to be treated with the same respect and deference as any member of the imperial family. The news spread through the capital like wildfire. In the Jiang family compound, Lady Jiang received the notification and went pale. It's her, she whispered, staring at the official document with its imperial seals. It's Qingyu. She's been with the Grand Princess this entire time. Lord Jiang took the document from her shaking hands and read it himself. His face remained carefully neutral, but Qingyu, who was not there but could imagine the scene perfectly, knew what he must be thinking. They'd lost her. Not just lost her in the crowd, but lost her to a power they couldn't challenge. The Grand Princess was untouchable, beloved by the Emperor, wealthy beyond measure. If she'd chosen to adopt Qingyu, there was nothing the Jiang family could do about it. We should congratulate her, Lord Jiang said carefully. Send gifts. Make it clear that we bear no ill will toward her good fortune. Fortune? Lady Jiang's voice rose sharply. She abandoned her family. She ran away and now she's pretending to be. She's not pretending anything, Lord Jiang interrupted. The adoption is legal and binding. As of this moment, she is Yun Qingyu, daughter of the Grand Princess, and we will treat her accordingly or risk the princess's wrath. In another room, Jiang Qingyu stared at the same notification with an expression that was harder to read. His hands clenched around the paper, crinkling it. Gee. Jiang Wanru's soft voice came from the doorway. What does it mean? It means, Qingyu said slowly, that Qingyu has found herself a powerful protector, one we can't simply dismiss or ignore. Wanru's delicate face creased with worry. But she's still just Qingyu. She's still the unwanted daughter. Surely the Grand Princess will see through her eventually. Qingyu didn't answer. He was remembering that morning at the festival when Qingyu had refused to come. The way she'd looked at him, not with the desperate need for approval he'd grown accustomed to, but with something cold and knowing. He'd been reborn 3 months before the festival. 3 months to remember his past life, to understand the truth about Wanru's identity, to make his choice about which sister to protect. He'd chosen Wanru. Of course he had. In his past life, Qingyu had been weak, pathetic, constantly causing trouble for the family with her neediness and complaints. Wanru had been sweet, grateful, useful. The choice had been obvious, but now Qingyu had somehow escaped his carefully laid plan and found herself adopted by the most powerful woman in the empire after the Empress herself. She knew, Qingyu muttered. What? Nothing. He crumpled the notification and threw it aside. Don't worry, Wanru, this changes nothing. Qingyu might have a fancy new title, but she's still just a child. She'll make mistakes, and when she does, we'll be ready. But even as he said it, doubt crept into his heart. Because the Qingyu who had looked at him that morning, cold, knowing, unafraid, hadn't been the weak sister he remembered. She'd been something else entirely. Qingyu's new life was both wonderful and exhausting. Every morning began before dawn with etiquette lessons. She learned how to move like nobility, how to walk with grace, how to sit without slouching, how to bow at exactly the right angle for each rank and situation. Her teachers were stern but not unkind, and they seemed genuinely pleased with her progress. "Young miss is a natural," one of them remarked to Linglong after the first week. "It's as if she's already lived at court before." "I have," Qingyu thought. "For 20 years, watching and learning and trying desperately to fit in. This time, though, the lessons didn't feel like torture. This time, she wasn't learning to please people who would never be satisfied. She was learning to survive in a world where power and grace were armor. Afternoons were devoted to scholarly pursuits. She studied history, poetry, calligraphy, and political theory under tutors who actually listened to her questions and encouraged her curiosity. After years of being dismissed as stupid or difficult by the Jiang family tutors, it was shocking to be treated as intelligent. "You have an unusual mind," her history tutor told her. "You don't just memorize facts. You see patterns, connections. That's rare in one so young." "That's because I've lived through the consequences," Qingyu thought. "I know which alliances led to which betrayals. I know which policies caused which disasters." But she only smiled and thanked him for the compliment. Evenings were spent with Ling Xiao, who had indeed decided that Qingyu was her new best friend. The 5-year-old followed her everywhere, chattering constantly, demanding stories and games. At first, Qingyu found it exhausting. In her past life, she'd never had close friends. The Jiang family had made sure of that, isolating her and spreading rumors that she was difficult and strange. But slowly, she began to soften toward the cheerful little girl. Ling Xiao's affection was genuine and uncomplicated. When she hugged Qingyu, she meant it. When she said, "I love you, Jie," there was no hidden calculation behind the words. It was nice, strange and unfamiliar, but nice. "Tell me about the scary men again," Ling Xiao demanded one evening as they sat together in Qingyu's chamber. "The ones you saved me from." "Told you that story a dozen times," Qingyu protested. "But I like hearing it. You were so brave. You didn't cry at all." "I cried plenty," Qingyu thought. "In my past life, I cried for years, but tears never changed anything." "Anyone would have done the same," she said instead. "No, they wouldn't." Ling Xiao shook her head stubbornly. "Most people would have run away. Tried to get a reward. But you didn't. You just helped me because I needed help." Qingyu smiled despite herself. "Is that what you told your mother?" "Every day. I told her you're the best sister in the whole world, and she should definitely keep you forever." "What did she say to that?" She said. Ling Xiao's face scrunched up as she tried to remember the exact words. "She said that loyalty is worth more than gold, and anyone who proves their loyalty when it costs them something is worth keeping close." Qingyu's smile faded, so Linglong understood. Of course she did. The princess hadn't survived decades of palace politics by being naive. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. One of Linglong's attendants entered and bowed. "Young Miss Qingyu, young Miss Ling Xiao, the Grand Princess requests your presence in the main hall. The Jiang family has come to call." Qingyu's blood ran cold. "Jiang family?" Ling Xiao wrinkled her nose. "Who are they?" "People from my past," Qingyu said quietly. "People I'd hoped not to see again so soon." "Should we go?" Ling Xiao looked worried. "Mother said we didn't have to see people if we didn't want to." "Should go," Qingyu decided. "If they've come all this way, refusing to see them would only make things worse." She stood and smoothed down her robes, fine silk in deep blue, embroidered with silver clouds. The robes of an imperial daughter, not a discarded child. She looked like someone who belonged here now. Someone with power and status. Good. Let them see what they'd thrown away. The main hall was arranged for formal visits. Linglong sat in the position of honor, dressed in her full court regalia, every inch the imperial princess. Around her stood attendants and guards, a clear display of power. And kneeling on the reception mats below were 3 figures: Lord Jiang, Lady Jiang, and Jiang Qingyu. Qingyu felt a savage satisfaction at seeing them kneel. In her past life, she'd been the one who knelt before them, begging for scraps of approval. Not anymore. She entered the hall with Ling Xiao at her side, both of them walking with the grace they'd been taught. Linglong gestured for them to sit on cushions beside her, not below her, but at her side. The placement was deliberate and unmistakable. These were her daughters, equal in her eyes, protected by her status. Lady Jiang's face tightened when she saw Qingyu. Lord Jiang's expression remained carefully neutral. But Yunxiao stared at her with something that might have been shock or might have been calculation. He'd been reborn too. She was certain of it now. The way his eyes tracked her movements, the way his jaw clenched when he saw her sitting beside the princess, he remembered. He knew what she'd been in their past life. And he was trying to figure out what had changed. Lord Jiang, Linglong said pleasantly. Lady Jiang, young Master Jiang, how kind of you to visit. To what do I owe the honor? Lord Jiang bowed deeply. Your Highness, we come to offer our congratulations on your recent adoption. We were overjoyed to learn that our daughter has found such a fortunate placement. Daughter, Linglong's voice was silk over steel. I was under the impression that Yun Qingyu was no longer part of the Jiang family. The adoption papers were quite clear on that point. Of course, Lord Jiang said quickly. We meant no disrespect. We only wish to express our happiness that the child is well cared for, and perhaps, he hesitated, perhaps to visit with her if your Highness permits. We have been concerned about her well-being. Concerned. Linglong's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. How interesting. I was told by multiple sources that Qingyu was rather neglected in your household, that she was housed in a back chamber, given minimal attention, and generally treated as an inconvenience. Lady Jiang flinched. Lord Jiang's carefully neutral expression cracked slightly. There may have been some misunderstandings, he began. Misunderstandings, Linglong repeated. I see. Qingyu, my dear, do you wish to speak with your former family? All eyes turned to Qingyu. She met their gazes calmly, one by one. Her father who had never defended her mother who had never loved her brother who had deliberately abandoned her. In her past life, she would have been desperate for any chance to speak with them, to try one more time to earn their affection. Now, she felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Have nothing to say to them, she said clearly. They stopped being my family the moment they chose someone else over me. I wish them well, but I have no desire for further contact. Lady Jiang's face flushed with anger. How dare you? How dare I? Qingyu's voice remained calm, but her words cut like knives. How dare I acknowledge the truth? I was an unwanted burden in your household. You made that clear every single day. So when the opportunity came to find a family who actually wanted me, I took it. You should be grateful. Now you don't have to pretend to care anymore. Qingyu, Lord Jiang's voice was sharp. That is no way to speak to your mother. Lady Jiang is not my mother, Qingyu corrected. Grand Princess Linglong is my mother. Lady Jiang is simply the woman who gave birth to me and then spent the next 7 years wishing she hadn't. Hall fell silent. Even Linglong looked slightly surprised by Qingyu's bluntness. But Qingyu was done pretending, done swallowing insults and accepting cruelty with a smile. She'd wasted one entire lifetime doing that, and where had it gotten her? Dead in a prison cell, murdered by the sister who had stolen her life. Just a child, Lady Jiang said, her voice shaking with rage. You don't understand what you're doing. When you're older, when you realize what you've thrown away. I understand perfectly, Qingyu interrupted. I've thrown away nothing of value, and I've gained everything that matters. She stood, her small body radiating a dignity that made her seem much older than 7. If there's nothing else, I'd like to return to my studies. I have calligraphy practice this afternoon. Linglong nodded, something like approval gleaming in her eyes. Of course, my dear, you're dismissed. Qingyu bowed to the princess, then turned and walked out of the hall without sparing the Jiang family another glance. Behind her, she heard Lady Jiang's strangled gasp, heard Lord Jiang attempting to smooth things over with apologies and excuses. But the only voice that mattered was Linglong's, cool and final. I think it's time for you to leave. Yun Qingyu has made her feelings quite clear, and I see no reason to force an unwanted reunion. Guards, please escort the Jiang family out. Qingyu kept walking, her head high, until she reached her chamber. Only then did she allow herself to smile, round one to her. That night, Linglong came to Qingyu's chamber after Ling Xiao had been put to bed. You were quite harsh with them, the princess observed, settling onto a cushion. Was I supposed to be gentle? Qingyu asked. No, Linglong smiled. I'm not criticizing, I'm impressed. Most children your age would have been desperate for their parents' approval, even if those parents had treated them poorly. But you looked at them as if they were strangers. They are strangers, Qingyu said simply. I lived in their house, but I never knew them, not really. Your brother, young Master Yunxiao, seemed particularly disturbed by your rejection. Qingyu's hands clenched in her lap. My brother made his choice long ago. He chose to protect Wanru instead of me. I simply accepted his decision and moved on. Wanru is the girl who was switched at birth. Yes. Yet the family kept her, raised her, favored her over you. Why? It was a good question. In her past life, Qingyu had tormented herself with it for years. Why had they loved Wanru so easily while finding it impossible to love their own blood? Now, with the clarity of hindsight and her brother's rebirth to consider, she thought she understood. Because Wanru was helpless, she said slowly. She was weak and sweet and needed protection. She made them feel strong, important, whereas she paused. I was their obligation, their duty. Loving me would have required effort, sacrifice. It was easier to love the girl who asked for nothing but affection. Linglong nodded slowly. You're wise beyond your years, Qingyu. Sometimes I forget you're only 7. Because I'm not, Qingyu thought. I'm 27 with 20 years of pain and betrayal teaching me lessons no child should have to learn. But aloud, she said only, I've had to grow up quickly. So I see. Linglong was quiet for a moment, then reached out and gently touched Qingyu's cheek. I want you to know something. When I adopted you, it wasn't just out of gratitude for saving Ling Xiao. It was because when I looked at you, I saw myself at that age, alone, unloved, desperate to prove my worth to people who would never value me. She pulled her hand back. I don't need you to be perfect, Qingyu. I don't need you to be sweet or helpless or endlessly grateful. I just need you to be yourself, sharp edges and all. Can you do that? Qingyu felt something warm and painful bloom in her chest. Yes, she whispered. I can do that. Good. Linglong stood. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we begin your political education. If you're going to be my daughter, you need to understand how power really works in this empire. She left, and Qingyu was alone with her thoughts. For the first time since her rebirth, she felt the weight of what she'd lost and gained. She'd cut ties with her birth family, burned those bridges so thoroughly there was no going back. But in return, she'd found something she'd never had in either lifetime. A mother who actually wanted her. It was a fair trade. The next 6 months passed in a blur of education and growth. Qingyu absorbed knowledge like a sponge, her past life memories making everything easier to understand. When her political tutor discussed historical alliances, she already knew which ones would fail and why. When her etiquette teacher explained court hierarchies, she already understood the unspoken rules that governed interactions. She was careful not to reveal too much. She made deliberate mistakes. Asked questions she already knew the answers to, played the role of a bright but inexperienced child, but her tutors weren't fooled. Young Miss is extraordinary, one of them reported to Linglong. She grasps concepts that usually take students years to understand. Her memory is flawless, and her strategic thinking is unusual. She doesn't think like a child. Linglong agreed, watching Qingyu through the window as she practiced sword forms with Ling Xiao. She doesn't. Princess had her own theories about Qingyu's unusual maturity. None of them involved rebirth. That was too fantastic to believe. But she suspected trauma, perhaps something that had happened in the Jiang household that had forced Qingyu to develop survival instincts far beyond her years. Whatever the truth, Linglong found herself growing genuinely fond of her adopted daughter. Qingyu was sharp, clever, and refreshingly honest. She didn't manipulate or scheme for attention the way many children did. She simply stated what she wanted and accepted the consequences. It was a relief after years of court politics and false flattery. Mother, Ling Xiao called out, waving enthusiastically. Watch, Jie is teaching me how to disarm an opponent. Linglong smiled. Ling Xiao had flourished since Qingyu's arrival, becoming braver and more confident. The two girls were inseparable now, and watching them together eased something in the princess's heart. She'd done the right thing, adopting Qingyu. She was certain of it, even if the child was hiding secrets that might one day prove dangerous. The first public test came during the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was traditional for the imperial family to host a grand banquet, inviting all the noble families of the capital. Qingyu had attended these banquets in her past life as Jiang Qingyu, always relegated to the lowest tables, always ignored and overlooked. This time, she would enter as Yun Qingyu, adopted daughter of the Grand Princess. This time, everyone would have to acknowledge her. Nervous, Linglong asked as servants helped Qingyu into her formal robes. A little, Qingyu admitted. It wasn't a lie. Even with all her experience, walking into a room full of nobles who would be judging her every move was daunting. Don't be, you're my daughter. That means you walk in with your head high, secure in your position. Let them worry about impressing you, not the other way around. Wise advice. Qingyu took a deep breath and nodded. The robes they'd chosen for her were magnificent, deep purple silk embroidered with golden phoenixes, marking her as imperial family. Her hair was styled in an elaborate arrangement with jade pins. She looked like a princess. She looked nothing like the discarded Jiang daughter. When they entered the banquet hall, conversation stuttered and died. All eyes turned to them, to Linglong, resplendent in her ceremonial robes, and to the small girl at her side, dressed in colors that proclaimed her status. Qingyu kept her expression serene, her posture perfect. She'd learned in her past life how to be invisible. Now she was learning how to command attention instead. The emperor himself greeted them warmly. "Sister, and this must be your new daughter. Come, let me see her properly." Qingyu performed a flawless bow. "Your Majesty, I am honored by your attention." Emperor, a kind-faced man in his 50s, smiled. "Well-mannered and poised, you've chosen well, Linglong. Welcome to the family, Yun Qingyu." "Thank you, Your Majesty." As they moved through the hall toward their seats, Qingyu felt dozens of eyes tracking her. She recognized many of the faces, nobles she'd known in her past life, who had ignored or scorned her when she was just Jiang Qingyu. Now they watched her with calculation, wondering how to use this new connection to the Grand Princess. And there, at a table in the middle section, neither high nor low, sat the Jiang family. Qingyu's steps didn't falter, but she allowed herself to glance their way. Lady Jiang looked furious, her face tight with barely controlled rage. Lord Jiang appeared uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Yunxiao watched her with an unreadable expression, and Wanru stared at her with wide, confused eyes. The delicate beauty looked genuinely bewildered, as if she couldn't understand how the unwanted sister had suddenly become someone important. "You'll understand soon enough," Qingyu thought coldly. "You'll understand when I take back everything you stole from me, but not yet." She was still young, still building her power base. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and she was willing to wait until the moment was perfect. They reached the high table, where Linglong and her daughters would sit alongside the emperor and his immediate family. As Qingyu took her seat, she realized she was now looking down at the rest of the banquet hall, looking down at the Jiang family. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Smiling, Lingxiao whispered. "What are you thinking about?" "Justice," Qingyu whispered back. "I'm thinking about justice." Banquet proceeded with the usual formalities, speeches, toasts, carefully choreographed entertainment. Qingyu ate sparingly and observed everything, cataloging faces and reactions. Several noble families sent representatives to their table, offering congratulations on Linglong's adoption. Each time, Qingyu responded with perfect courtesy, neither too warm nor too cold. She was learning to play the game at the highest level now. Halfway through the banquet, a commotion at one of the lower tables caught her attention. A young noblewoman had apparently fainted, causing servants to rush over with concern. Qingyu recognized her, Lady Zhou, daughter of a minor minister. In her past life, Lady Zhou had been one of Wanru's closest friends, part of the circle that had made Qingyu's life miserable with their whispers and pointed exclusion. "Dramatic," Lingxiao muttered. "She's probably just trying to get attention." Qingyu frowned. Something about the woman's collapse didn't look right. The way she'd clutched her throat before falling, the strange color of her lips. "Mother," she said quietly to Linglong. "I think that woman has been poisoned." Linglong's eyes sharpened. "Are you certain?" "No, but I know the signs." In her past life, Qingyu had studied poisons extensively after a particularly nasty attempt on her own life. "Look at her lips, they're turning blue, and see how her hands are clenched. That's not a simple fainting spell." Linglong stood immediately, her voice carrying across the hall. "Someone fetch the Imperial physician. Now." But Qingyu was already moving. She'd learned medicine not just to heal, but to survive. And if Lady Zhou died here at an imperial banquet, the political fallout would be enormous. She reached the woman's side before the servants could stop her. Lady Zhou's breathing was shallow, her pulse erratic, definitely poison. What was she drinking? Qingyu demanded. A terrified servant held up a wine cup. Qingyu sniffed it carefully, her trained nose detecting the faint bitter scent beneath the wine's aroma. "Nightshade extract," she said. Not enough to kill immediately, but enough to cause collapse and possible death if untreated. She turned to the nearest servant. "I need activated charcoal, water, and a bucket. Quickly." The servant hesitated, looking uncertain about taking orders from a child. "Do it." Linglong's voice cracked like a whip. "My daughter knows what she's doing." The items materialized within moments. Qingyu mixed the charcoal with water and carefully poured it down Lady Zhou's throat, massaging her neck to force her to swallow. Then she positioned the bucket and pressed on the woman's stomach, forcing her to vomit up the poisoned wine. It was messy, undignified work. Several nobles turned away in disgust, But when Lady Zhou finally drew a deep, gasping breath and her color began to return, shocked whispers filled the hall. She saved her. Grand Princess's daughter knows medicine. Did you see how quickly she acted? Qingyu sat back, wiping her hands on a cloth a servant provided. Lady Zhou blinked up at her groggily, confusion evident in her eyes. You're Jiang, she whispered. Qingyu corrected gently. And you're welcome. Imperial physician arrived moments later, but there was little left for him to do except confirm what Qingyu had already accomplished. Lady Zhou would recover fully. As servants carried the woman away to recover in private chambers, the emperor himself approached Qingyu. That was impressive, he said. Where did a child learn to recognize poisons and administer treatment so quickly? Qingyu bowed. I've studied medicine, Your Majesty, and I've learned that knowledge can save lives. Indeed it can. The emperor glanced at Linglong. Your daughter is full of surprises, sister. She is, Linglong agreed, pride evident in her voice. But Qingyu was looking past them, toward the Jiang family's table. Yun Qingyu was staring at her with undisguised shock. Wanru's delicate face had gone pale, they were remembering. In their past life, Qingyu had known nothing about medicine or poisons. She'd been helpless, easily manipulated, easily hurt. Now she was demonstrating skills and knowledge she shouldn't possess. Yun Qing's eyes narrowed. He was putting the pieces together, realizing that something had changed fundamentally about his discarded sister. Good. Let him worry. Let him wonder. The game was just beginning. After the banquet, Linglong summoned Qingyu to her private chambers. Sit, the princess commanded, pouring tea with her own hands, a gesture of respect that wasn't lost on Qingyu. You saved Lady Zhou's life tonight, Linglong said. The emperor was impressed, so was half the court. By tomorrow, everyone in the capital will be talking about the Grand Princess's daughter who knows medicine and acts with courage. I just did what was necessary, Qingyu replied. No, Linglong set down her teacup. You did what almost no one else in that hall could have done. You recognized the poison, knew the treatment, and acted without hesitation. Those aren't skills most 7-year-olds possess. Qingyu said nothing. I'm not asking you to explain, Linglong continued. Everyone has secrets, but I am asking you to be careful. Tonight you made yourself visible in a way that will attract attention, both good and bad. There are people at court who will see you as a threat now. I understand. Do you? Linglong leaned forward. Qingyu, you're intelligent and capable, but you're also still a child. The court is full of people who will try to use you, manipulate you, or hurt you to get to me. You need to be vigilant. Always vigilant, Qingyu said softly. Something in her tone made Linglong pause. The princess studied her adopted daughter's face, seeing shadows there that shouldn't exist in such a young child. What happened to you? She asked quietly. In the Jiang household. What did they do to make you like this? For a moment, Qingyu considered telling her everything. The abandonment, the abuse, the 20 years of suffering that had ended in murder and betrayal. But rebirth was impossible to explain. Linglong wouldn't believe her. No one would. They taught me that trust is dangerous, Qingyu said instead. That relying on others will only lead to pain. That the only person I can truly depend on is myself. Now, Linglong asked. Do you still believe that? Qingyu looked at her adoptive mother. This woman who had taken her in, protected her, valued her. A woman who had given her more genuine affection in 6 months than the Jiang family had in 7 years. I'm learning, she said softly, that there might be exceptions. Linglong's expression softened. She reached out and gently touched Qingyu's hand. Good, because you're not alone anymore, Qingyu. You have me. You have Ling Xiao. You have the protection of the Imperial family. Whatever the Jiangs did to you, whatever happened in your past, it's over now. You're safe here. Safe. The word should have been comforting. But Qingyu knew better than to believe in absolute safety. She'd been murdered in her past life despite being officially part of the Imperial family through marriage. Safety was an illusion that power maintained, and power could always be taken away. But she didn't say that. Instead, she squeezed Linglong's hand and offered a small smile. Thank you, Mother. It was the first time she'd used that title without being prompted. Linglong's eyes brightened with emotion. Welcome, my daughter. Now go rest. Tomorrow we'll deal with the political aftermath of tonight's drama. The political aftermath came faster than expected. By morning, 3 things had happened. First, Lady Zhou's family sent an elaborate gift to the Grand Princess's estate, along with a formal letter of gratitude for saving their daughter's life. They pledged their loyalty and support to Linglong's household. Second, an investigation into the poisoning revealed that the wine had been tampered with before reaching Lady Zhou. The servant who had poured it was found dead in his quarters, apparent suicide, though everyone suspected murder to silence him. Third, the Jiang family requested a private audience with the Grand Princess. Frightened, Linglong said, as she and Qingyu reviewed the morning's correspondence. Lady Zhou was sitting at a table near theirs, close enough that people might suspect them of involvement in the poisoning. They involved? Qingyu asked. Doubt it. The Jiangs are many things, but they're not stupid enough to attempt murder at an imperial banquet. Linglong tapped her fingers against the desk. Still, the timing is suspicious. You save Lady Zhou's life the same night your former family is present. Makes them look incompetent by comparison, unable to even recognize what was happening while their former daughter acts with skill and courage. Should we see them? Do you want to? Qingyu considered. In her past life, she would have been desperate for any contact with her family, even if it meant more pain. Now she felt only cold calculation. Yes, she said. I want to see what they're planning. Linglong smiled slightly. You sound like me at your age, very well, but I'll be present for the meeting. And we'll have guards nearby. You think they might try something violent? No, but I think they might try something manipulative, and I want you to see how I handle people who attempt to use sentiment as a weapon. Jiang family arrived that afternoon, Lord Jiang, Lady Jiang, and Yunxiao. Notably, Wanru was absent. They were shown into a reception room, less formal than the main hall but still designed to remind visitors of their place. Linglong sat in the position of authority with Qingyu beside her. The Jiangs were directed to seats that required them to look slightly upward to meet their eyes. Every detail was calculated to remind them. They were supplicants here, not equals. Lord Jiang, Linglong greeted them pleasantly. How unexpected to hear from you again so soon. Highness, Lord Jiang bowed deeply. We come to congratulate young Miss Yun on her heroic actions last night. Her quick thinking saved Lady Zhou's life. Indeed it did, Linglong agreed. My daughter is quite accomplished. Always knew Qing, Lady Jiang caught herself. We always knew she was intelligent. Even as a small child in our household, she showed remarkable aptitude. Qingyu nearly laughed at the blatant lie. In her past life, Lady Jiang had called her stupid, clumsy, and worthless at every opportunity. Interesting, Linglong said dryly. Because when I made inquiries about her treatment in your household, I heard quite different accounts. Stories of neglect and isolation. Lady Jiang flushed. There were misunderstandings. Family dynamics can be complex. Complex, Linglong repeated. What a diplomatic word. She turned to Yunxiao. And you, young master, what brings you here today? Yunxiao met her gaze steadily. He was only 12, but there was something in his eyes that reminded Qingyu uncomfortably of an adult. Of course, he was reborn too, carrying his own lifetime of memories. I came to apologize to my sister, he said. Silence fell. Even Linglong looked surprised. Qingyu studied her brother's face, searching for deception. But his expression seemed genuine, regret mixed with something that might have been guilt. Apologize for what? She asked quietly. Abandoning you at the festival. Yunxiao's hands clenched in his lap. I told myself I was protecting the family by leaving you behind, that it was necessary. But the truth is, I was a coward. I chose the easier path and you paid the price. For a moment, Qingyu almost believed him, almost let herself hope that her brother had genuinely changed, that his rebirth had given him perspective and regret. Then she remembered his eyes in the banquet hall, cold, calculating, assessing her like a threat to be eliminated. This wasn't genuine remorse. This was strategy. Yunxiao had realized that she was no longer weak and isolated, that she had powerful protection and was demonstrating skills that made her valuable to the court. So he was adjusting his approach, trying to rebuild bridges he deliberately burned. Your apology is noted, Qingyu said coolly. But it changes nothing. You made your choice that day and I made mine. We're strangers now. We're family, Yunxiao insisted. No, we share blood, but that's all. Family is the people who choose to stand by you, who value you, who would never deliberately harm you. She glanced at Linglong. I have a family now, and it's not you. Yunxiao's jaw tightened. There, a flash of anger quickly suppressed. He hadn't expected her to reject him so firmly. Qingyu, Lord Jiang said, his voice taking on a stern note. You're being childish. Whatever difficulties existed in the past, we are still your blood relatives. The Jiang family has a responsibility to you, and you have a responsibility to us. What responsibility? Qingyu asked. To pretend the past never happened, to act grateful for a childhood of neglect, to help rebuild a connection you deliberately destroyed. We raised you. You housed me, Qingyu interrupted. You fed me the minimum required. You gave me the worst rooms, the least attention, the smallest portion of everything. And when I needed you most, you left me alone in a dangerous situation. She stood, her small body radiating dignity. You don't get to claim me now that I've become valuable. You don't get to rewrite history and pretend you were loving parents. And you certainly don't get to demand that I serve the Jiang family's interests after you made it clear I was never truly part of that family. How dare you speak to your father that way? Lady Jiang's voice rose sharply. Lord Jiang is not my father, Qingyu said firmly. His Majesty the Emperor signed the adoption papers. By law and by choice, I am Yun Qingyu now. The Jiang family has no claim on me. Ungrateful. Enough. Linglong's voice cut through Lady Jiang's outburst like a blade. The princess stood, and suddenly the temperature in the room seemed to drop. You come to my home and dare to insult my daughter. You presume to make demands after years of neglect and mistreatment. Her gaze swept over the three Jiangs like ice. Let me make something very clear. Yun Qingyu is under my protection. She owes the Jiang family nothing. Not gratitude, not loyalty, not even basic courtesy given how you treated her. And if I hear that any of you have attempted to manipulate, pressure, or harm her in any way, you will learn exactly why people fear the Grand Princess's wrath. Lord Jiang had gone pale. Your Highness, we meant no disrespect. Then leave, now, and do not return unless you are invited. Dismissal was absolute. The Jiangs had no choice but to bow and retreat, their faces burning with humiliation. As the door closed behind them, Linglong turned to Qingyu. Are you all right? Yes. Qingyu took a deep breath, feeling strangely exhilarated. Thank you for defending me. Always. Linglong pulled her into an embrace, rare physical affection that made Qingyu's eyes sting with unexpected tears. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine. Outside the estate, the Jiang family climbed into their carriage in tense silence. Once they were moving, Lady Jiang exploded. That ungrateful little wretch, after everything we did for her. What did we do for her? Yunxiao asked quietly. His mother stared at him. What? What did we actually do for Qingyu? Yunxiao repeated. We took her in because we had to, after discovering Wanru wasn't our biological daughter. But did we ever actually treat her like family, or did we just tolerate her existence while wishing she'd disappear? She should have been grateful to even have a home. Lady Jiang snapped. Should she? Yunxiao looked out the window, his expression troubled. Mother, I've been thinking about that day at the festival, about why I really left her behind. Lord Jiang shifted uncomfortably. This isn't the time. I left her because Wanru asked me to, Yunxiao said. She told me that Qingyu made her feel unwelcome, that having both of them in the family was too difficult, that I needed to choose. So I chose Wanru. I chose the sister who was weak and needed protection over the sister who was actually my blood. He turned to face his parents. And you made the same choice, didn't you? Both of you. You chose the daughter who made you feel needed over the daughter who reminded you of your mistakes and obligations. That's not fair, Lady Jiang protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Yunxiao's hands clenched into fists. I remember now both lives, everything that happened. In my first life, I stood by and watched as Qingyu was destroyed. I told myself I was being neutral, staying out of family drama, but I wasn't neutral. I was complicit. He took a shaky breath. And when I was reborn, when I had a chance to make different choices, I did the same thing all over again. I abandoned her at the festival because it was easier than confronting the truth. What truth? Lord Jiang asked quietly. That we were never a real family. That we were just people playing roles, pretending to be something we weren't. And the only one who paid the price for our pretense was Qingyu. Silence fell in the carriage. Lady Jiang turned away, her jaw tight. Lord Jiang stared at his hands. Finally, Lord Jiang spoke. It's too late now, she's made her choice, and perhaps, he paused, perhaps it was the right one. The Grand Princess can give her things we never could, protection, status, a mother who actually wants her. So we just give up, Lady Jiang demanded. Let her go. What choice do we have? Lord Jiang sighed. She's beyond our reach now, and after what we've done, she has no reason to help us even if we asked. Yunxiao said nothing, but his mind was racing. His mother was wrong, they couldn't just let Qingyu go. Not because they wanted her back, but because she was dangerous now. In their past life, Qingyu had been weak, easily manipulated, eventually destroyed. She died in that prison cell, broken and defeated, but this Qingyu was different. Sharp, calculating, powerful. And the way she'd looked at him in that reception room, like she knew exactly who he was and what he'd done, suggested that somehow, impossibly, she remembered too, which meant she was playing a game with knowledge of the future, backed by the Grand Princess's resources and protection. If she decided to take revenge for what they'd done to her in that other life. Yunxiao closed his eyes. He'd thought abandoning her at the festival would solve his problems, would let him focus on protecting Wanru and building the future he remembered. Instead, he might have created his own worst enemy. Months passed. Qingyu continued her education, growing in skill and knowledge. She learned politics from Linglong, strategy from military tutors, medicine from the imperial physicians, and court intrigue from simple observation. Lingxiao remained her constant companion, the cheerful little girl providing lightness to balance Qingyu's darker purpose. And Linglong proved to be everything Qingyu had never had, a mother who listened, who valued her intelligence, who protected her fiercely. But Qingyu never forgot her true purpose. She was building towards something, preparing. Reven. By the time she turned 8, the capital society had fully accepted her as Yun Qingyu, the Grand Princess's daughter. Invitations flooded in. Noble families sought her favor. Young ladies tried to befriend her. And through it all, Qingyu played her role perfectly, poised, gracious, mysteriously wise beyond her years. The Jiang family watched from a distance, unable to approach but unable to look away. Wanru had made her debut in society, cultivating her image as the gentle, talented daughter. But somehow, Qingyu always outshone her, not through obvious competition, but through quiet competence and genuine capability. When Wanru played music at a gathering, Qingyu played better. When Wanru composed poetry, Qingyu's verses were more profound. When Wanru attempted medicine, Qingyu had already saved 3 lives with her knowledge. It was maddening for the Jiang family. The daughter they discarded was becoming someone they desperately wished they could claim. But more than that, she was becoming dangerous. One evening, during a court function, Qingyu found herself near a conversation between ministers discussing a proposed trade agreement with the Northern Territories. The terms seem favorable, one minister said. We should approve it quickly. Disagree, Qingyu said quietly. The ministers turned to her in surprise. She was only 8 years old, standing barely as tall as their chests, but she met their gazes calmly. The terms seem favorable now, she continued, but they're structured to create dependency. In 3 years, when the initial period expires, the northern traders will have monopolized enough of our markets that we'll have no choice but to accept whatever terms they demand. It's a trap disguised as generosity. Ministers exchanged glances. One of them, Minister Chen, an older man with shrewd eyes, studied her thoughtfully. Analyze the full text of the agreement, he asked. Yes. And I've studied the economic patterns of northern trade over the past 50 years. This is a strategy they've used before with smaller kingdoms. It always ends the same way, with economic subjugation. Remarkable. Minister Chen smiled. The Grand Princess's daughter is as intelligent as rumored. I'll recommend a more thorough review of the agreement before approval. He bowed to her with genuine respect, not the dismissive courtesy adults usually showed children, but real acknowledgement of her insight. Across the room, Qingyu felt eyes on her. She glanced over to see Yunxiao watching, his expression unreadable. Their gazes met for a moment. Then he turned away. But Qingyu had seen what she needed to see. Her brother was afraid of her now. Good. Fear was a useful tool. The real confrontation came on the eve of Qingyu's 9th birthday. Linglong was hosting a grand celebration, inviting all the important families of the capital. It would be Qingyu's formal debut into society as an adult member of the imperial family. Young, yes, but officially recognized as someone with political weight and social standing. The Jiang family received an invitation. They couldn't refuse without causing a scandal. 3 days before the celebration, Wanru requested a private meeting with Qingyu. Should I see her? Qingyu asked Linglong. Do you want to? Qingyu considered. She'd avoided direct contact with Wanru since her adoption, content to let her reputation and achievements speak for themselves. But curiosity pricked at her now. What did Wanru want? What game was she playing? Yes, she decided. I'll see her. The meeting was arranged in a neutral garden with guards nearby but out of earshot. Wanru arrived dressed in pale pink robes, her hair adorned with pearl pins. She looked like a delicate flower, beautiful and fragile. But Qingyu knew the thorns hidden beneath that soft exterior. Qingyu, Wanru greeted her with a warm smile. Thank you for seeing me. Qingyu corrected. We're not family anymore, Wanru. Use my proper name. Smile faltered slightly. Of course, Yun Qingyu, I wanted to apologize. What? For taking your place. Wanru's eyes filled with tears, perfect, crystalline tears that made her look even more beautiful. I never meant to cause you pain. When they discovered I wasn't the real daughter, I offered to leave. But Lady Jiang, your mother, insisted I stay. She said the family needed me. Liar, Qingyu thought coldly. In their past life, she'd heard this same speech a dozen times. Wanru playing the victim, claiming she'd never wanted to steal Qingyu's place, that she was just as much a victim of circumstances. It was manipulation wrapped in tears and pretty words. How noble of you, Qingyu said. Offering to leave while knowing they'd never let you go. Wanru blinked, surprised by the edge in Qingyu's voice. I genuinely cared for them. They raised me. I couldn't just abandon them. You could watch as they abandoned their real daughter. I tried to help you. I suggested they give you better quarters, more attention. But Lady Jiang said you were difficult, that you rejected their affection. Stop. Qingyu held up a hand. Just stop. I'm not interested in your excuses or your false tears. Say what you actually came to say. Wanru's tears dried instantly. Her delicate expression hardened into something colder, more calculating. There, Qingyu thought with satisfaction. There's the real you. Fine, Wanru said. I came to warn you. Warn me about what? About making enemies you can't handle. Wanru stepped closer, her voice dropping. You think you're safe now, protected by the Grand Princess, but you're still just a child playing at politics. There are people at court who see you as a threat, a commoner-born girl who's risen too high too fast. Not commoner-born, I'm Jiang family blood. You, Wanru smiled cruelly. How do you know? What if there was another switch? What if you're not really the Jiang daughter at all? What if I'm the real one and you're just no one? Qingyu felt cold rage wash over her. In her past life, Wanru had planted these same seeds of doubt, whispered these same poisonous suggestions. She'd made Qingyu question her own identity until she barely knew who she was anymore. But this time, Qingyu had the clarity of rebirth. She knew the truth. Nice try, she said calmly. But I'm not the frightened, desperate child you remember. Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. Remember? Wanru's eyes narrowed. What do you mean by that? Qingyu realized her mistake too late. She'd revealed too much, suggested knowledge she shouldn't have, but perhaps it didn't matter. Perhaps it was time for Wanru to know she was facing an enemy who understood all her tricks. I mean, Qingyu said carefully, that I've learned from experience. I know how you operate, Wanru. Sweet words hiding cruel intentions, tears used as weapons, playing the victim while secretly orchestrating everything. You're paranoid. Or am I just finally seeing clearly? Qingyu stepped closer until they were face to face. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to the Jiang family and tell them that trying to manipulate me won't work, that I'm beyond their reach now, and that if they make any moves against me or my new family, they'll regret it. That a threat? It's a promise. Qingyu's voice was quiet but absolute. I have power now, Wanru, real power, and I know how to use it. So unless you want to discover just how dangerous the discarded daughter has become, I suggest you leave me alone. For a moment, genuine fear flickered across Wanru's face. Then she masked it with her usual delicate expression and stepped back. Changed, she said softly. You're not the sister I remember. I was never your sister, Qingyu replied. And you're right, I have changed. I've become someone who won't be destroyed by people like you. Wanru turned and walked away, her steps quick and agitated. Qingyu watched her go, feeling both triumphant and uneasy. That conversation would have consequences. Wanru would report back to the Jiang family, tell them that Qingyu was more dangerous than they'd realized. Good. Let them worry. Let them scramble to figure out what had changed and how to respond. The hunter had become the hunted. Qingyu's 9th birthday celebration was magnificent. The Grand Princess's estate was transformed into a wonderland of lights and music. Every important family in the capital attended, dressed in their finest robes, bringing elaborate gifts. Qingyu wore deep purple silk embroidered with silver phoenixes and dragons, the highest symbols of imperial favor. Her hair was arranged in an intricate style that required 3 servants and an hour to complete. She looked like a young empress. She felt like a warrior preparing for battle. The celebration proceeded with speeches and toasts. The emperor himself attended, a rare honor that wasn't lost on anyone. He publicly praised Qingyu's intelligence, her medical knowledge, her service to the empire. Qingyu is a credit to her family and to the throne, he announced. It is our pleasure to recognize her as a true daughter of the imperial house, with all the rights and privileges that entails. It was an official declaration, one that raised Qingyu's status even higher. She was no longer just the Grand Princess's adopted daughter. She was recognized by the emperor himself as imperial family. The Jiang family, seated in a middle section, looked like they'd swallowed poison. After the formal ceremonies, the celebration became more relaxed. Nobles mingled, music played, and young people gathered in groups to talk and laugh. Qingyu found herself surrounded by admirers, young ladies seeking her friendship, young men hopping to catch her eye for future marriage alliances, older nobles wanting to build connections. She handled them all with practiced grace, saying nothing meaningful while appearing warm and engaged. Then she saw him. A young man standing at the edge of the garden, watching the celebration with detached interest. He wore robes that marked him as high nobility, but she didn't recognize his face. More importantly, she recognized the quality of his observation. He wasn't watching the party, he was studying it, analyzing the social dynamics with the same calculated precision she used. Their eyes met across the garden. He smiled slightly, as if acknowledging a kindred spirit. Then he walked toward her. "Qingyu," he said with a perfect bow. "I've heard much about you. You are Prince Xiaoming's second son of the emperor, your cousin, I suppose, now that you're officially imperial family." Qingyu's mind raced. Prince Xiaoming. In her past life, he'd been a minor figure, uninvolved in court politics, content to study and travel. But something about the way he looked at her suggested there was more beneath that disinterested surface. "Your Highness," she said, bowing appropriately. "I'm honored. I'm the spare prince, much like you were once the spare daughter." His smile was wry. "We're both people who weren't supposed to matter, who have somehow ended up in positions of unexpected influence." "That how you see me? Influential?" "I see you as dangerous," he said frankly. "In the best possible way. You've gone from discarded daughter to imperial princess in less than 2 years. You've demonstrated skills and intelligence far beyond your age. You've made powerful enemies who don't yet realize how outmatched they are." Qingyu stared at him. "You're very direct." "Are you, from what I understand? I thought we might appreciate honesty with each other." He glanced toward where the Jiang family stood. "They're watching you, your former family, trying to figure out your next move." "Them watch." "Oh, I intend to." Ming's smile widened. "Because I think you're planning something that's going to shake the entire capital, and I want a front row seat." He bowed again and walked away, leaving Qingyu staring after him. That was unexpected and potentially useful. A prince who recognized her capabilities and wasn't threatened by them could be a valuable ally, or a dangerous enemy if she misjudged him. She filed the encounter away for later consideration and returned to her duties as the evening's guest of honor. But as the celebration continued, as she smiled and chatted and played her role perfectly, part of her mind was already planning the next move. The Jiang family thought they'd seen the extent of her transformation. They thought she'd become someone respectable, someone who would quietly live her life as an imperial princess. They had no idea what was coming. Qingyu had spent almost 2 years preparing, building her power base, gaining skills and knowledge. She'd been patient, careful, strategic. But patience had limits, and she was tired of waiting. It was time for the Jiang family to pay for what they'd done, in this life and the last. The game was about to change from defense to offense. And this time, Qingyu was playing to win. The reckoning begins. The first blow came quietly, almost invisibly. Minister Jiang, Qingyu's grandfather on her father's side, held a position in the Ministry of Revenue. It was a comfortable post, not too high to attract dangerous attention, not too low to be insignificant. The Jiang family's wealth and status depended largely on his government salary and connections. 1 month after Qingyu's birthday celebration, Minister Jiang was called to account for discrepancies in the revenue records. It started small. A few numbers that didn't quite add up, some questionable expenditures that needed clarification. Nothing serious, just routine auditing. But as investigators dug deeper, they found more problems. Patterns of irregularities stretching back years. Money diverted to private accounts. Contracts awarded to family members. Small instances of corruption that individually meant little but collectively painted a damning picture. Minister Jiang insisted he was innocent, that these were accounting errors, that someone must have falsified records. No one believed him. Within 2 weeks, he was stripped of his position and fined heavily. The Jiang family's social standing took a significant hit. Invitations dried up. Business partners became scarce. The reputation they'd carefully cultivated for generations began to crumble. Lord Jiang came to the Grand Princess's estate, desperate for an audience. Linglong received him coldly. "What do you want?" "My father is innocent," Lord Jiang insisted. "Someone has falsified those records to frame him, and I believe it's connected to our falling out with Qingyu." "You suggesting my daughter is responsible for your father's corruption, suggesting that the timing is suspicious. These allegations surface mere weeks after Qingyu's birthday, after she's been officially recognized by the emperor. She has the connections now to arrange such a thing." Linglong's expression was ice. "Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, what exactly do you expect me to do about it? Punish my daughter for supposedly exposing a corrupt official? He's not corrupt." "The records were falsified. Then prove it. Bring evidence. Clear his name through proper channels. But don't come to me expecting sympathy because the Jiang family is finally facing consequences for their actions." She stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "You treated Qingyu like garbage. You abandoned her, neglected her, made her feel worthless. And now you want me to protect you from the possibility that she might have grown up into someone powerful enough to strike back. She's just a child. She's my child," Linglong said sharply. "And she's more than you ever deserved. Now leave." Lord Jiang left, his face pale with fear and anger. In her study, Qingyu sat reviewing documents with Minister Chen, the shrewd older man who had recognized her intelligence at the court function. "Investigation proceeds well," Chen reported. "Minister Jiang's corruption was real enough. We merely accelerated the discovery process. Ensured that all the evidence was properly documented," Qingyu added. "Quite so. Though I must say, young miss, you're remarkably ruthless for one so young. Most would hesitate before destroying a grandfather's career." "Was never my grandfather," Qingyu said calmly. "Not in any way that mattered, and his corruption was real. I simply made sure it came to light." "Ah, but you also made sure it came to light at precisely the right time, in precisely the right way to cause maximum damage to the Jiang family." Chen smiled slightly. "You're not just exposing corruption, you're sending a message." "The message is simple. Don't mistake my youth for weakness. Don't assume that because I was once powerless, I always will be. And don't ever think that the past can be forgotten just because it's convenient for you." Chen nodded approvingly. "You'll go far, young miss. Assuming you survive." "I plan to." The second blow came during the spring festival. Jiang Wanru had been carefully cultivating a reputation as the most talented young lady in the capital. She played music beautifully, composed elegant poetry, and had mastered several artistic skills. Families with eligible sons were beginning to make inquiries about potential marriage alliances. Then, during a prominent gathering, a question arose about the authenticity of her talents. A visiting scholar from a prestigious academy attended one of Wanru's musical performances. Afterward, he remarked, seemingly casually, that the piece she'd played bore remarkable similarity to a composition from a famous master who had died 20 years ago. "The same, of course," he said. "But the structure, the techniques, the overall feel, quite similar, almost as if she'd studied that master's work very closely. Too closely, perhaps." Implication was clear. Wanru might be passing off others' work as her own. Wanru denied it vehemently. She insisted her compositions were original, products of her own talent and study. But doubt had been planted. And once people started looking critically at her work, they found more similarities. Her poetry echoed famous verses. Her paintings resembled well-known works. Her embroidery patterns were strikingly similar to techniques from a particular regional style. Was it plagiarism? Or just unfortunate coincidence and heavy influence? No one could say for certain. But the whispers began, and in high society, whispers were as deadly as shouts. Families that had been considering marriage alliances began to withdraw their interest. After all, who wanted a daughter-in-law whose talents might be fraudulent, whose reputation might be built on deception? Lady Jiang was furious. She confronted several of the people spreading the rumors, demanding they stop. But the rumors only grew stronger. And the more the Jiang family fought them, the more it looked like they had something to hide. Wanru, for her part, became increasingly distressed. Her carefully constructed image was crumbling, and she didn't understand why or how to stop it. In truth, every one of her compositions had been original. She was genuinely talented. But Qingyu had planted just enough doubts, spread just enough carefully worded observations, made just enough subtle comparisons that people began to question what they'd previously admired. It was brilliant, surgical destruction of a reputation. And it was almost impossible to defend against, because the accusations were never direct enough to refute cleanly. During one particularly difficult day, Wanru sought out Yunxiao. "Why is this happening?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why are people suddenly questioning everything about me?" Yunxiao looked at his adopted sister, the girl he'd chosen to protect over his own blood, and felt the weight of his choices. "It's Qingyu," he said quietly. "She's behind this, all of it." "How? She's not just anything," Yunxiao interrupted. "She's the Grand Princess's daughter with connections throughout the court and the empire. She has resources we can't match and knowledge we don't understand." He took a breath. "And more than that, she remembers." "Remembers what?" Yunxiao hesitated. How could he explain rebirth to someone who hadn't experienced it? How could he tell Wanru that in another life, another timeline? "They destroyed Qingyu so thoroughly that she died in a prison cell. She remembers being abandoned," he said instead. "Being rejected, being treated as less than nothing while you were given everything, and now she's making us pay for it." Wanru's face went pale. "What do we do?" "I don't know," Yunxiao admitted. In my experience, Qingyu was always reactive. She responded to what we did to her, but she never initiated attacks. He gestured helplessly. This is different. This is calculated, strategic. She's not just defending herself, she's destroying us piece by piece. Can't we fight back? How? She's protected by the Grand Princess and recognized by the Emperor. Any move we make against her will be seen as an attack on the Imperial family. We're trapped. Wanru clutched his arm. "But you're reborn too, aren't you? You have knowledge of the future. Can't you use that?" Yunxiao looked at her with something like pity. "The future I remember is already gone." Everything changed the moment Qingyu refused to go to the festival with me. "Whatever happens now, we're in unknown territory." He pulled away gently. "The best thing we can do is minimize the damage. Stop trying to fight her. Stop giving her ammunition. And hope that eventually she'll be satisfied with what she's already taken from us." But even as he said it, Yunxiao didn't believe it. He'd seen the look in Qingyu's eyes at that birthday celebration. Cold, calculating, patient. She wasn't satisfied. Not even close. This was only the beginning. The third blow came during marriage season. Yunxiao was now 13, approaching the age when marriage arrangements would be finalized. The Jiang family had been in negotiations with several prominent families, trying to secure an advantageous alliance that might restore some of their fading prestige. Then, mysteriously, every negotiation fell through. The first family withdrew with vague excuses about timing and compatibility. The second suddenly discovered a prior commitment they'd forgotten about. The third simply stopped responding to messages. Lord Jiang realized what was happening. They were being blacklisted. Someone with significant influence was quietly ensuring that no respectable family would ally themselves with the Jiangs through marriage. He didn't need to guess who. In desperation, he sought an audience with the emperor himself. A risky move that could backfire spectacularly, but he was running out of options. The emperor received him in a private chamber, his expression unreadable. "Lord Jiang, you requested this audience to discuss. What was it? Interference in marriage negotiations?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Lord Jiang bowed deeply. "My family has been attempting to arrange a marriage for my son, but every negotiation has mysteriously failed. I believe someone with imperial connections is sabotaging these efforts." "I see. Do you think I should intervene in private marriage negotiations?" "I think, Your Majesty, that if someone is abusing imperial influence for personal vendettas, it's a matter that concerns the throne." Emperor was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Tell me, Lord Jiang, what do you know about your daughter?" "My daughter, your biological daughter, Yun Qingyu, the child you abandoned at a festival, neglected for years, and then tried to reclaim once she became valuable." Lord Jiang's mouth went dry. "Your Majesty, there were misunderstandings." "Stop." The Emperor's voice was sharp. "I've read the reports. I know exactly how Qingyu was treated in your household. I know about the back chamber, the minimal care, the constant comparisons to the adopted daughter you favored. I know everything." He leaned forward. "So let me be very clear. If my niece is indeed using her influence to ensure your family faces consequences for how they treated her, I have no intention of stopping her. In fact, I applaud it. She's demonstrating precisely the kind of strategic thinking and political acumen that serves the empire well." "Your Majesty, you come to me asking for imperial intervention." The Emperor's laugh was cold. "You abandoned an imperial princess. You treated her like garbage, and now you want me to protect you from her. No, Lord Jiang, you made your choice years ago. Live with the consequences. Dismissal was absolute and humiliating. Lord Jiang left the palace knowing that the Jiang family was finished. They had no allies, no protection, no path forward. Within a generation, they would fade into obscurity, all because of one discarded daughter who had grown into someone they couldn't control. Qingyu heard about her father's audience with the emperor from Linglong, who'd heard it from the emperor himself over tea. My brother was quite impressed with you, Linglong said, smiling. He said you've learned the first rule of power. Make your enemies destroy themselves, then step aside and let them fall. I just helped expose the truth, Qingyu said innocently. The minister's corruption was real. Wanru's techniques really do resemble other masters. She studied them closely, after all. And families have the right to choose their marriage alliances carefully. Of course, very reasonable. Linglong's smile widened. You're terrifying, you know that, in the best possible way. Qingyu allowed herself a small smile. The Jiang family's downfall was proceeding exactly as planned. She'd been patient, strategic, striking at their foundations rather than attacking directly. But there was still one piece missing. One person who deserved special attention, Jiang Qingyu. Her brother had been reborn too. She was certain of it now. Which meant he remembered what he'd done to her in that other life. He remembered standing by while Wanru destroyed her. He remembered making the choice to abandon her, again and again, in ways both small and devastating. And in this life, when given the chance to make different choices, he'd done the same thing. He'd abandoned her at the festival, choosing Wanru over his own blood sister. That deserved a special kind of justice. Qingyu spent weeks planning, observing, gathering information. She learned Yunxiao's routines, his habits, his secrets. And slowly, she discovered something interesting. Her brother was gambling. Not openly, not in ways that would shame the family. But he was making bets with other young nobles, playing games of chance in private establishments, wagering money the family could no longer afford to lose. Why? Because in his past life, he'd made a fortune through gambling. He remembered specific outcomes, knew which bets to make, which games to play. He was trying to use his rebirth knowledge to rebuild the family fortune. It was clever. It should have worked. But he'd made one critical miscalculation. He'd forgotten that he wasn't the only one who'd been reborn. Qingyu began placing her own bets. Not against Yunxiao directly. That would be too obvious. But she subtly manipulated the games he played, used her own knowledge and resources to ensure that the outcomes he remembered didn't happen quite the way he expected. A horse race where the favorite was drugged just enough to slow down. A dice game where the dice were weighted. A card game where the dealer had been paid to shuffle a particular way. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed sabotage. Just small changes that meant Yunxiao's certain bets kept failing. He lost money. A lot of money. More than the Jiang family could afford. And when Lord Jiang discovered the gambling debts, the explosion was spectacular. How could you be so foolish? He shouted at Yunxiao, his face purple with rage. Our family is already struggling and you're throwing away money on gambling. I thought I could win it back, Yunxiao protested. I had a system, I knew which bets to make. Clearly you didn't. You've lost nearly all our liquid funds. We'll have to sell property just to pay your debts. Lady Jiang wept dramatically. Wanru looked terrified. And Yunxiao stood there, confusion and growing horror on his face. He'd been so certain. Those were bets he'd won in his past life. Outcomes he'd witnessed personally. How had they all gone wrong unless someone else knew, someone else remembered. Someone else was actively working against him. His eyes widened with realization and fear. Qingyu. It had to be Qingyu. 2 days later, Yunxiao did something desperate. Something foolish. He went to the Grand Princess's estate and demanded to see Qingyu. The guards almost threw him out immediately, but Qingyu, hearing about his arrival, decided to grant him an audience. She was curious what he would say, how he would try to justify himself. They met in a garden with guards nearby but out of earshot. Yunxiao looked terrible, haggard, sleep-deprived, desperate. Doing this, he said without preamble. All of it, you're destroying our family piece by piece. Qingyu's voice was calm, almost pleasant. How would I manage that? Because you remember. Just like I do. Yunxiao stepped closer. You were reborn too, that's the only explanation. That's why you refused to come to the festival. You knew I was going to abandon you because you remembered it from before. Qingyu said nothing, but her lack of denial was confirmation enough. Yunxiao demanded. When did you come back? The morning of the festival. I woke up with 20 years of memories, knowing exactly what you were going to do to me. 20 years. Yunxiao looked confused. But I only remember until I was 30. What happened after that? Qingyu's smile was cold. Oh, so much. Would you like to know how it ended for me in that other life, how I died? Yunxiao went pale. I was executed, Qingyu said softly. Framed for treason by Wanru with you standing by watching. I died in a prison cell alone and broken after spending decades being slowly destroyed by the family that should have protected me. I didn't know. You knew enough. You knew Wanru was framing me for things I didn't do. You knew she was manipulating the family against me. You knew, and you did nothing. Because it was easier to let me be destroyed than to risk losing the sister you preferred. That's not fair. I was trying to keep the peace. Peace, Qingyu's voice was.